Okay. Good morning from us, and it is another beautiful Thursday morning here in Abuja. The Central Bank of Nigeria has announced a revised framework for automated teller machine ATM transaction fee, eliminating free interbank withdrawals and introducing charges of up to 600 naira per 20,000 naira withdrawals. Now, the new policy becomes effective from March 1, 2025. In a circular signed by the Acting Director of Financial Policy and Regulation Department, John Onoja, the Apex Bank attributed the upward review of fee to rising operational costs and the need to improve service efficiency in Nigeria's banking sector. Under the updated framework, bank customers withdrawing cash from an ATM operated by their own bank, which is commonly referred to as on-us transactions, will continue to enjoy fee-free withdrawals. And this means that customers using an ATM owned by their bank for cash withdrawals will not incur any additional charges.
However, withdrawals from ATMs belonging to other banks classified as not on us transactions would not attract additional charges. Customers withdrawing cash from an ATM located within a bank's premises but operated by a different financial institution will be charged a fee of 100 naira per 20,000 naira withdrawal. Furthermore, transactions conducted and at off-site ATMs located outside bank premises, such as those found in shopping malls, airports, fuel stations, or other public locations, would incur a base charge of 100 naira per 20,000 naira withdrawal, in addition to a short charge of up to 500 naira per transaction. This means that the total cost of withdrawing 20,000 naira from an off-site ATM that is not affiliated with the customer's bank could reach 600 naira. And joining us live in our studio is Uche Waleke, and he is the president of Capital Market Academics, and he joins us live in the studio. It's good to have you on the program this morning.
Thanks so much, CJ.
Thank you for joining us.
Nice to have you, Prof.
Yeah, good morning.
This is definitely, another policy that may not sit well with Nigerians. But aside that, there are more pressing issues. Take a look at, some of the ATM being malfunctioning or being out of cash due to poor maintenance. Now, they are going to have to pay extra, for that. Is this are these reasons given by the CBN, are they justifiable?
Well, some have said, I think you even alluded to it at the very beginning. Some have referred to this season as a season of tariffs. We've seen the hike in the telecoms tariff, electricity tariff, port charges, and so on. But in this particular instance, let me even answer you directly. Okay, this measure by the central bank, this new directive, is it justified? My answer is yes. Okay. Yes, I think it is. Now, if you look at the history of these guidelines, again, of course, it comes under the CBN's bank charges. Okay, the first one was released in 2004, then reviewed in 2013, 2017. And then the last review we have had so far, okay, was in 2020. So this is the first time after 2020 that we're having such, a review. And the question to ask is, what is the whole idea behind even ATM? Okay. Now, in many countries of the world, and these are the ones that I know, ATMs, they're more or less, synonymous with reliability, with accessibility, to financial services. But in our own case in Nigeria, the story is different. So ATMs are actually meant to, make banking more convenient. ATMs are meant to, improve financial inclusion, increase, as I said, access to financial services. Okay, but over the months, you say over the years, this objective hasn't been met. Okay. On account of partly what you mentioned, these days we'll find, a lot of ATMs, malfunctioning. Okay, you go to an ATM to withdraw money, you see a very, unpleasant message, unable to dispense cash. Okay, and these ATMs are hardly well maintained. So part of why they malfunction is because they are not, maintained, and the cost of maintaining them, has been on the rise. So I'm coming to the
where
charges.
Does that,
yes,
all those money go?
Yes, I'll come to the charges. Okay, so you see, the option is to let that system die, and then leave us at the mercy of POS operators. And you can see the recent, high charges that POS operators have come because the option of ATM hasn't been viable, as it were. So in order to restore the viability, in order to restore the functionality of ATM, I think that this is why this measure is coming. And mind you, the central bank is even saying that if you are also withdrawing from your bank ATM, you still will not pay any charge.
Now, okay. Prof, let me ask you this. Let me speak like a consumer.
So, yes, Imodu, let me summarize.
All right.
The major reason for it is even contained in that circular, okay, to kind of minimize the cost of, reduce the burden on the part of banks of maintaining those ATMs. And, of course, to also improve efficiency of ATMs. That's the summary of the justification for the increase. Okay.
Now, it takes two to tango.
Yes.
In this case, you have the service providers and you have the consumers. Now, it may be justifiable for the service provider because they want to improve efficiency. We have to introduce that.
Yes.
Have we thought about the consumers?
Yes.
Now, who has sanctioned the service providers all the years when the ATMs were ineffective and the consumers were bearing the brunt?
Yes.
And nobody sanctioned them. Then the next one now is to introduce this fee. So my worry is, did we consider the consumers that will have to pay?
Yes, I don't think the CBN just woke up to, release this increase. I think they must have done that in consultation with the banks. You see, as far as this ATM operation is concerned, okay, the banks are the ones that wear the shoes, so they know where, it is pinching. So I also think it's largely in response to that. Yes, I agree with you. One of the implications, of course, is that it will increase the cost of withdrawals on the part of, consumers. But I also told you what are these options. If you make the ATMs, more efficient, okay, if consumers can now access ATMs, if banks can now deploy these ATMs, in many locations, which is also when I'll be speaking to the responsibility of the central bank in this regard, maybe advising the central bank. One of the things I will be saying, okay, which I'm saying upfront, is that the central bank should now ensure that banks now deploy these, ATMs, okay, on the part of the central bank too, to also ensure that these ATMs, are loaded with cash, so that you don't go to an ATM and it tells you unable to dispense cash. So banks should also be, meant to have this cash by the central bank to be able to load the ATMs. So there is no doubt that, as I said, it will, on the part of withdrawals, it will increase. But I also said the issue of withdrawing from your bank's ATM, is still free. So what that means is that you would now expect a customer, okay, a bank customer, to rely more on his bank's ATM, than going to other ATMs, particularly when those ATMs are off-site, when they're outside the bank's premises. Of course, that's where you now have the issue of 100 naira pay per 20,000 naira, in addition to a surcharge. Okay, so the best way to circumvent that is to use your bank's ATM. As I said earlier on, if you compare that again with what you pay if you pay withdrawal, maybe 10,000 naira withdrawal from a typical POS, okay, it's still not it's still low. But what is important is that the banks should now leverage this and improve on their services with respect to ATM.
And this policy aims to reduce the reliance on cash and encourage the use of electronic payment channels. However, this could indirectly, enable POS operators, like you said, who are largely unregulated, to hike charges and exploit vulnerable Nigerians. Won't this be counterproductive?
No, not necessarily. If, as a matter of fact, I think the argument is even the reverse. Because if you have ATMs that are functional, okay, the competition will now be there, okay, as opposed to having very little options, going to the POS to withdraw cash when you need cash. Okay, the ATMs are there. So it will now compel the POS operators to even reduce their charges. So that's the way I figure it. Okay, if you look at the impact of these non-functional ATMs on the economy is huge, particularly on the SMEs. Okay, SMEs that you and I know that are cash-based. Okay, and it also has a way of eroding confidence in the banking sector. If you go to an ATM and you get disenchanted, you're not getting money, the next thing to do is, of course, to keep your cash at home. So you're not thinking of taking your cash to the bank because you feel anytime you go to ATMs to withdraw, unlike what happens abroad, you won't be able to get the money. So the point I'm making is that it will foster competition. Okay, you have very other options, payment channels. And again, indirectly, even though it's not one of the primary reasons, the circular didn't say it's one of the primary reasons, indirectly it will also encourage, mobile banking, internet banking, other options, electronic banking, again, in a way, also promoting the cashless policy. So I see a lot of merits in what has happened, and I also want to approach it from that point of view. The bottom line for me is efficiency. The bottom line for me is, having functional, ATMs.
Okay. My argument now is that we still have a huge percentage of Nigerians that don't operate within the banking framework.
Yes.
Now, if you have this system that is increasing charges on whatever transaction they do you think it will encourage them to take more of their monies into the bank or keep their monies at home? So at the end of the day, we are not promoting the cashless society we think we want to promote because we're discouraging people from depositing their monies in the bank. Don't you think so?
Well, it's also important, very closely tied to the question you asked. It's also important to recognize that the central bank has also released a guide with respect to bank charges. Okay? It's also speaking to the question you asked me earlier, bank charges generally. So it's important for the public to be aware of these bank charges and to ensure that any time a bank is charging them something outside of the framework of those guidelines, they have a right, to complain. Okay, take for example, even in the case of deposits, you deposit money in a bank. How many Nigerians know that current accounts, often you hear oftentimes that current accounts don't attract interest. How many Nigerians know that even current accounts attract interest? Okay, if you look at that guidelines, it says the interest is negotiable. Okay, and the negotiability, if you like, is at the instance of the customer. That's what the guideline says. So what it means is that if you have a current account and the current account is in credit, you have money there. If you don't go to discuss with your bank and say, let's talk, I need some interest, they won't do anything. So because the Nigerians need to be aware, of that. In the case of savings, for example, you have a savings account. The thing is there that the minimum interest you should get on your savings account should be 30% of the monetary policy rate. Today, monetary policy rate is 27.5. Okay, so what it means is that if you have money in the bank, the minimum interest you should have is 8.5, and it says minimum. Minimum. So it also means that you can get something higher. A lot of Nigerians again don't know. That they're not aware of this thing. So
I'd like you to hold your thoughts because we have to take this quick commercial now.
Yeah.
So we're glad to have you back, and we're still live on the TVC Breakfast from Abuja. And with us in the studio is still Uche Waleke, and he's the president of Capital Market Academics. Now, let's talk about the electronic payment in Nigeria. And it has not been very effective due to low band penetration, which causes several failed transactions, like you mentioned earlier. Do you feel that the new CBN policy on ATM charges would likely put additional pressure on fintech companies that are still struggling to build capacity to meet the growing demands of Nigerians?
Yeah, but on the other hand, it will also put them in a stronger position to even invest more in technology, invest in deployment of these ATMs, to also reduce the pressure you talked about in the case of electronic money transactions. And the good thing is that even in the electronic money transactions, in terms of the charges, they were unaffected. Okay, if you're transferring anything under 5,000, for example, it is just 10 naira. Between 5,000, 50,000, 25 naira, and it's only when it's above 50,000 that's up to 50 naira. So those charges have been, have remained the same, since 2020. As a matter of fact, the whole idea is even to reduce, see how those charges can be reduced, to encourage people to use them, to migrate to those electronic platforms. While you are increasing other charges, as far as electronic transactions are concerned, I think that's the philosophy even behind those, that's
to empower the fintech bank.
Yes, to empower the fintech, and also to also a way of promoting the cashless policy, encouraging more Nigerians to do more e-transactions.
Let's go back to that issue of Nigerians are not aware of all these things, and whose responsibility is it to actually educate the people? And also talking about the POS, the ATM. There was a time, even now you go to a lot of ATMs, they're not working. And Nigerians were expecting that. You kept on having the multiplication of POS operators, but nobody is sanctioning. Whose responsibility is it actually to sanction and to educate Nigerians on the benefits of some of these things?
Yes, largely that of the central bank. Of course, the commercial banks too also have that responsibility to educate the public. As a matter of fact, for example, bank customers should know these things, should know their rights. So the Bill of Rights is there. It is the central bank has a responsibility to ensure that the public, gets to know this Bill of Rights. Their rights to privacy, their rights to, information, their right to seek redress. Okay, banks are required to put in place, a redress mechanism in place. Okay, yes, central bank has its own under, the complaints framework that says if a customer has a complaint, first of all, report to your bank, and if the bank is unable to do anything within 2 weeks, you should now escalate it, to the central bank. Okay, so these things are there, but a lot of people are not aware, and that's why I think the central bank has a responsibility to find a way to translate these things in the major Nigerian languages, so that the public, can be aware of their rights. The public can be aware of these bank charges. The issue of these bank charges, very important, because I'm sure people complain that of excess charges, arbitrary charges, and so on. Okay, these are things you should know. That's why my advice to every small business, every business, including individuals, is that periodically, okay, it can be once in a year, get your accounts. Banks are expected to give you free of charge your statement of account on a monthly basis. It's only when you apply for a special one that you can pay, but on a monthly basis you're supposed to get it. So if you get that for 1 year, sit down, get a financial advisor, and reconcile your account. You may find, I've had the experience, you may find that by the time you finish reconciliation, you'll find that you still have a lot of money to recover from the banks.
Wow.
Arising from arbitrary charges, excess charges, unauthorized charges, these things are there.
I agree with that, Professor, but there are some broader issues in the banking sector, one of which is weak corporate governance, insider dealings, like you said, and abuses, money laundering, and many more. This is still a problem despite regulations put in place by the CBN, but how can compliance be strengthened to ensure that, the customers are not being exploited, like you mentioned?
Yes, if you look at, I talked about the guide, we had 2024, 2013, 17. Over the years, what happened in 2020, I think a major difference was the inclusion of a section on sanctions and how to enforce the sanctions. Very, very critical. Because if you put in place all these things and you're not enforcing, then of course it makes little or no difference. So if you look at that, the central bank says the compliance officer, executive compliance officers in the banks, should have that responsibility. The head of IT of the bank should also have the responsibility of ensuring that banks, don't infringe. Now, it's the duty of the central bank, as I said, to enforce. And what I think should happen now is for the central bank to look at those penalties again, because sometimes the banks feel they prefer to even pay the penalties, okay, because the penalties are low. If you look at the guide, I think what they said there is in some cases, 2 million, in some other cases, 1 million. For example, you find that the bank says if a customer has, the guide says if a customer has a complaint, the bank is expected to log that complaint in its the management framework, customer complaints management framework, okay, system. You're supposed to log it there, generate a code, and give to the customer. Okay, so many banks are not. Yes, and if a bank fails to do that, the bank, will be liable to pay just 1 million naira. So they don't. Many of them don't do that. And if you ask them to pay 1 million, per distance, they easily pay. So maybe the central bank should consider, begin to consider how to increase, those penalties, and to also begin to enforce them. Enforcement is very key. Okay, that's also when you talk about corporate governance. Now that's more like the issue with board, ensuring that no insider dealings happen. Okay, I'm on the board of a bank, so I also understand what corporate governance is all about. Ensuring that the bank is properly run. So central bank should also not hesitate to use a hammer. Okay, and we understand, of course, the banking system is a very sensitive system. Sometimes it's not in all cases we may expect the central bank to publish or to make public, the kind of sanctions or they have used on a particular bank because of the sensitivity of the banking system. Because if you hear today that central bank has done something in a particular bank that is maybe one of the systemically important banks, there could be a run on the bank, okay, people, and then that can affect the system. So sometimes central bank, does those things without really announcing them. But it's important. I am sure the central bank, knows that it's important that enforcement is very key, and the consumer protection department of central bank too has to be strengthened. Okay, because sometimes you also hear people say even when they complain, escalate, they hardly get response. But to be fair to the central bank too, sometimes it's also because they have not followed the procedure or the guidelines for complaints management, including even how you write a letter. If you go to their website, you see how you should write a letter of complaint. It is there. So when you have not followed that procedure and your letter, they receive your letter, okay, through maybe their email, cpd at cbn.gov.ng. They receive the letter. Of course, they may not act because you have not followed the guidelines. So people should be aware of these things. So educating the public, the banking public, is very critical. As far as what we are saying here is concerned.
Well, that's it. Enforcement on the part of the CBN, strengthening its regulation, and also communication to the public to understand, what is required of them to ensure they are protected and not being exploited. Thank you so much for your time with us on the program.
So you can.
It was quite educative.
Can I consign your accounts?
Of course, I'll do that. Of course, I'll even demand for my statements after this
and it's free.
program.
Yeah, it's free. Okay.
Well, we must thank you so much, Professor Uche Uwaleke, for your time with us on the program.
My
thank
pleasure,
you for the
TJ.
robust conversation.
Thank you.
Well, that's it from us in Abuja. It's back to you in Lagos, Veronica and Ibrahim. Do you print your statements every month?
No, not every month, but I go through them every month to understand my expenses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, well, for me, I don't know. I get the email every month, but I don't think I usually open it because I know what I expended, what is coming in, and all of that.
I hope they don't deduct charges from you.
it's a constant K. But at the same time, I'm wondering if these ATMs, the ATMs for these banks will allow you to take more than, because I know most of the ATMs around, you only have access to 5,000. If you are not a customer of the bank, 10,000 if you're a customer. So it's just, I don't know, we should just work at it.
Consumer protection is key at this point, but then let's wait and see how things pan out. Thank you, Ashomomo. Thank you, TJC, once again.